Welcome back to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugic, and I am a Level 3 integrative health practitioner and health coach. My purpose is to connect you with the message and the messengers of life-changing and empowering information. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome a guest today who just lives down the street from me. She brings a truly powerful blend of clinical rigor and academic depth. Dena Ford has over 15 years of experience as a licensed mental health counselor and 5 years successfully navigating the private practice world. Dena's credentials are as deep as her insights. She holds a master's degree in mental health counseling from Rollins College and a doctorate in sociology from the University of Central Florida. In this episode, we tackle the core question of Season 3, what's keeping me stuck? You'll hear about Dena's journey, and then we dive deep into some of the most critical topics in modern mental health. This is an episode packed with actionable steps and genuine hope. We'll demystify EMDR and somatic therapy, tackle common myths about seeking help, and critically explore how and why the nervous system can remain stuck in the draining cycle of fight or flight. We'll show you how this can manifest as physical pain or persistent mental health struggles. Plus, we'll touch on the power of neuroplasticity, crucial lifestyle changes, the complexities of menopause, and what about the mental toll it takes on a caregiver. In this day and age, there's also the unique mental health challenges facing the younger, social media-driven generation. Dena offers practical insights and gentle guidance, proving that healing is absolutely possible and that mental health is physical health. Get ready to learn how your body, mind, and life can move from a state of survival mode to a lasting place of regulation, awareness, and true empowerment. Dena Ford, my neighbor, my friend, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Christy. Thanks for having me.
It's an honor to have you here and for you to spread your knowledge. So I know you and I have consulted and talked a few times about certain other people that maybe would benefit from care such as what you offer. And I thought to myself, why not bring this to people? The whole theme of Season 3 is, why are you stuck? Like, let's get to these blocks and why you're stuck. And they can be physical, they can be mental. So the first thing I want to ask you is the same thing I ask everyone when I start my podcast. And that is, what is your why? And why did you get into mental health counseling?
I love it. There's certainly history. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into a lot of history. But the idea was I grew up as a non-traditional, I went to school as a non-traditional college student. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I was really struggling a lot. And just when I took that first psychology class, everything came into perspective for me. I really had a better understanding. Much later down the line, I realized that I had a lot of generational trauma that I didn't realize, of course, until I was an adult myself. And so it kind of brought that back into perspective for me as why that class was so instrumental for me. And so that launched me into moving forward into education when I was in a community where people just didn't go to college. People didn't have the education for it. They didn't have the resources. Funding wasn't there. But I found a way. And once I found a way, I realized I grew up in a house. My father had severe PTSD. He was a Korean War vet. We didn't know it. We didn't know what it was called. Nobody talked about it. It was the big family secret. And of course, my mom also had clinical depression. I didn't know all of that until I got well into my academic career. So that really hit home for me. And that's my why. My why is because I kind of lived it firsthand. I was looking for answers, and education changed my life completely. And so I was able to give that back when I started working with college students. I was able to help give that knowledge and experience back.
Yeah, and isn't that, I mean, most of the majority of the guests that come on this podcast, we're all in the fields that we're in because we experienced it ourselves or someone we know experienced it. And that's why we get into these fields. And you touched on generational trauma, and like the awareness is difficult. The awareness is difficult around that because, it's just not like you said, it's not talked about. You don't know what these things. So how do you help people understand generational trauma and then cope with it?
It's an interesting topic, and I'll tell you too, for myself, it's not something I would have identified with with the knowledge that I had. And part of that is when you grow up and develop in an environment, that's the only way that your brain understands. There's no other way that your brain recognizes that's a different alternative. So it just is part of our narrative. It's who we are. So the conversation really starts with asking the question that you just asked. Why? Why are you seeking help? Why are you seeking support? And so we're able to really drill into understanding that. And what's really interesting is I have and we may get into this a little bit later, but I have a questionnaire that I have many of my new clients go through. I have many questionnaires with a new provider. You know what that's like. But one of the questionnaires is on adverse childhood experiences, where you go through and you do the checklist. And it's hard. They're really, really hard questions to ask and to answer. And I have many clients who have answered no or zero to all of those adverse experience questions. And as we start getting into sessions, we realize they had significant adverse experiences as children. But you have to have a relationship developed with somebody that you can trust and that you feel safe with to be able to really open those channels of memory.
I think do you feel like people fear the word trauma? Like there's such a negative connotation to it. And what we talk about sometimes is big T traumas, little T traumas. Trauma is really about how your body holds on to this and how you hold on to it. It's really not about what the event is. Do you feel like there's a fear that it's automatic? I have felt like patients that have been at our clinic that I've worked at, but also my own personal clients, like there's a kind of trauma. What, me? No, like that doesn't talk
Right.
about, like it's such a negative connotation when really every single day and week we're all going through trauma. I mean, we're recording this on September 11th. You felt that was trauma for everybody, right? That day, and we're all
Absolutely.
dealing with what happened yesterday, and that's a traumatic event. So, do you feel like there's just a negative connotation automatically when someone hears the word trauma, like that doesn't pertain to me?
I think there's a lot of different answers to that question, but I do think there's a stigma outside of the fear. I think that, like with the word anxiety, we overuse the word anxiety, we overuse the word panic. And I think trauma is very similar. It has very distinct understanding, very distinct experiences that fit into that realm of the big T and the little t. With a lot of people that I've met with, and I do work with a lot of trauma, and with a lot of my clients that I've met with, just saying that word to them doesn't fit initially.
Huh?
It doesn't fit or resonate. It doesn't resonate with them initially, often, not always, but often. And as we really start to go through and reprocess the memories, they can come out and say the word, I experienced trauma. I experienced trauma.
And what are the like modalities that you're using? There's so much out there, right? There's so
There
many
is.
different ways to do this. And I've certainly gone through some paths that I've used that maybe the average person doesn't always think of first. But like, what are some of the ways and the tools that you use to help people process this?
One of the big ones that really opened my eyes up to a lot, and to be a practitioner for a lot of the tools, you really have to experience it from the client, the patient perspective. And so, what I practice, I have experienced from a client perspective. But EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing is a technique that I'm not certified in, I am trained in it. There's a whole certification process, but if you're trained in the initial process, you could practice it. And so I am trained in EMDR. That really helps to understand the somatic imprint of the trauma.
And explain that, because I think there's going to be people that they're not necessarily, going to get that process.
Absolutely. So, with the somatic process and understanding somatic therapy, it's really understanding messages from your body. And so, what I help to break down through reprocessing as a supplement of EMDR is take it back to your body as you're walking me through these memories, as you're talking me through these memories from head to toe. What are you feeling? Is your heartbeat rapidly increasing? Are you holding your breath? I see so many clients, and I do my sessions virtually, and I see so many clients holding their breath. They know I'm going to call them out on it. So are you holding your breath? Can you feel the butterfly effect in your stomach, the visceral experience? Talk me through head to toe what your body is telling you as you're going through these memories with me. So we're not going through and dredging up the memories. We're not going through and doing, the dredge of tell me every part of the memory, walk me through every detail. We're not doing that. We're talking about the memory so that all parts of the brain can process the memory the way it's supposed to organically. Because what tends to happen with trauma, and especially with chronic trauma, what tends to happen is certain parts of our brain don't start to operate with other parts of our brain organically the way that as a whole the muscles should be reacting together. So to bring it back to the question, it's understanding the body, the messages from the body when that memory recall comes up. Because over time, the idea of EMDR is that over reprocessing with the somatic focus is that you can look at the memory. The goal is to look at the memory, identify the memory, and then be able to say, it's over.
hmm
It's over. And the body is not being hijacked by it.
Yeah, and I think that we can be so out of touch with our own body and how it affects it. I call it that unconscious bracing, where you don't
Yeah,
realize that something's tight, right? Because your body's in fight or flight, and thinking about that makes you want to curl up into the fetal position, and you don't
right.
realize when you do that, your shoulders are in your ears, your forward head position, you're like
Eyes are
your
wide open.
eyes
Yeah.
wide open, like you would be if you were startled by a tiger chasing you, which is what we always use for sympathetic nervous system
Yep.
dominance.
Absolutely.
And then what are the symptoms? I say symptoms. I don't know if symptoms is the right word in this case, but what are because on my end, it's symptoms, right? Because we see the people that get chronically sick, right?
Yes.
And it turns into illness. That's when someone's done all the things from a supplement, protocol, testing, labs, lifestyle changes, and they're not moving the needle. There's usually a huge component of this. But when you're seeing this, I'm guessing the way you identify it the most times is with the ACE score. Are there actual physical symptoms that they're coming to you with that they have, or thoughts? How does it work when someone kind of walks in your door and kind of says, I think I need some help?
Yeah, that's a really difficult experience that I have witnessed so many of my clients go through. And where I start is the praise. You're asking, you have awareness that something needs to change and you're asking for help. So I always start with the praise. I have seen many clients, and what I'm recognizing is there's new research that's really putting more focus on chronic pain as it's related to historical trauma. We're starting to see a lot more research on that, which is so promising because I am hearing medical doctors, as you know, referring patients for help with that kind of somatic type of work, patients with chronic pain. So, and you see me kind of thinking through trying to figure out where to start, because there's a lot of different directions to start with that question. But I have clients that have come to me in debilitating pain, clients who haven't been able to work, young adults who have not been able to work because of the chronic pain. And what I will say is once the awareness is there and the dedication is there, major lifestyle changes start to happen. Significant lifestyle changes start to happen. That's hard. I don't want to minimize that with anybody because that's a big decision.
It's an exhausting road to go down. How many people have you talked to or seen that they're just wiped out after an EMDR session, right?
Absolutely. That's the central nervous system, right? We see that shift.
I've had it even just working with the osteopath and having him manually manipulate fascia. And I would come home after feeling these things and having memories pop into my head that I didn't even remember happened,
Absolutely.
and being exhausted by the process and just wanting to go to bed. So I'm like you. I would applaud anyone who goes down this path because it's not the easiest path to go down. It's way easier to take a few supplements and do a protocol. And this is not easy. And the other thing is that there's a lot of myths out there about EMDR, about trauma therapy. What's a myth about that you feel like you would want to clear up for everyone listening?
Well, I'll start with EMDR. EMDR, I do get some clients that come to me specifically for EMDR, and I kind of have to break down a little bit more of the details and understand that the memories aren't going to go away. The idea of EMDR is not to wipe out any memories, and I've actually had patients ask me to do that. That's not something that we do, and that's not a goal of EMDR. So that would be one. And the other part of it is it's not hypnosis. EMDR is not hypnosis. Are there others that have come to mind for you or that you've heard
For that,
for EMDR?
yeah, I mean the big one was wiping out memories, not having to worry about that anymore because it's gone, and there's a difference between gone and actually processing. That was the big one, and just, the trauma therapy being just, endless hours of just talk, I think is the other one that
Hmm.
I've heard mainly, right?
Yeah,
So
right,
that's not
right.
always the way it works. So those were the kind of big ones that I was thinking
Okay.
of.
And certainly talk therapy. I do have clients that want talk therapy and they don't want to go through EMDR. They just kind of want to talk through some significant changes in their life. But in terms of trauma, absolutely, I've seen it change lives and continue to change lives. But I think part of that too, and going back to the lifestyle changes, is with EMDR, there's other work to be done. It doesn't immediately change things after having sessions with EMDR and reprocessing memories and recognizing messages from your body. It doesn't stop there. It's incorporating. That's part of what we do. What I do with my clients is after the EMDR sessions, and my clients are at a place to where they feel, we call it the window of tolerance. If they're able to stay within the window of tolerance while recalling the memory, then the more work to be done is things like yoga, Pilates,
Yep.
walking regularly, nature bathing, being able to find those things, art, music, being able to find those things that help your body continue to heal, but most importantly, help maintain a well balanced central nervous system. Because when we see that crash, and that's what you were describing, when we see that crash after EMDR, okay, that's great because we know there's a shift there with your central nervous system. But now it's sort of like that seesaw. We want to find that
Hmm.
balance because we're going to have those moments where we're going to have panic, we're going to have high anxiety. Our bodies are designed to do that. That's what keeps us alive. But we want to make sure that we're bringing it back into balance.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the signs for me that I had truly processed something, because it's like what you said, you can't get rid of it for someone because it's
No,
in the subconscious, and your subconscious knows all.
that's
Your
how we're
subconscious.
designed.
It's
It's
how we're
what we,
designed. Your subconscious knows all. I think that the way I could tell when something was processed, it's like what you said, I could talk about it more without having some kind of visceral response or internal, like you said, like a bracing or an internal, like butterflies in the stomach
yeah.
kind of feeling. So that was always like my sign. And then, like, I think what I had to deal with, and you can probably relate to this, is that I feel like I'm an empathetic person. I'm an empath, where, like, not only was I feeling things that I went through, I was holding on to things that other people went through. Right. And then you end up with trapped emotions and all of this, like, trickling down into, like, not to desensitize yourself, but to understand, like, yes, you can feel empathy, but you don't have to carry someone else's
Right.
stuff. Right.
Right. Because we minimize it, right? When
Yeah,
we
we
carry
do.
somebody else's experience, we minimize it because it's now not just their experience.
Right, right. And so those are some of the things I learned. And then I loved what you said, like, about practices like yoga and Pilates. So can you explain and define what somatic work is and how you suggest that for others?
Somatic work, again, from my perspective, and I have to say, I'm not a medical doctor. I have to make sure I'm staying in my lane in terms of the therapeutic process. Though the training that I've done, comes from some of the masters in my field, which is Peter Levine, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and I mean, those are two of the big ones. And Tara Brock is also another big one. But the idea, and I'm seeing this more in certain types of yoga, like classic yoga. The idea of bringing the awareness back to the body. When you have awareness of deep breathing, it took me well into my adult life to realize I was never doing deep breathing. I never could do deep breathing until I started training to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's getting really clearing your lungs out when you're able to do that deep breathing. So somatic is really understanding the parts of our body that have been neglected, the parts of our body that are really starting to ache over time without any reason, without anything showing up on pathology reports. We have these aches, we have these pains, we have these headaches, we have this tightness in our chest, the tightness in our guts. Yes, we're looking at these types of things that are happening with our body with no pathology report, no reason, no underlying reason. And so we start to look at the history of that and understand those messages from your body. I think, first of all, that's important to understand those messages. Once we have the awareness and the information, I ask my clients, take this back to your doctor, this awareness, this new information that you've learned about your body. Take this back to your doctor. Have these discussions with your doctor.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like Dr. Perry Nicholson is known as Stop Chasing Pain on Instagram. And he started in chiropractic, and he's my episode 1 of this season, and he's fantastic. And I love learning from him, and he's big with chronic pain. And again, somebody who's gone through all this. His point about chronic pain, this is, I think, telling, and you see what you think about this. If the pain is chronic, meaning if you've treated that one spot, let's just say it's knee pain, you've treated that spot for 8 to 12 weeks, and it's still there and it's chronic, that's not where the problem lies. So you have to look other places, right? So that's
Right.
kind of what leads me down this path to talking about what makes people stuck. Because as a trainer, that's how I was trained. Because you think about how the body works, nothing happens in isolation. It's a system. It's
That's
a
an
system.
absolute system.
Right? So if someone's got knee pain for a long time and I'm not looking at how their hips aligned and how their ankles aligned, how do I know that it's coming from the knee? Because usually it's above or below it. And I think it works the same way, in the body. What do you know, if anything, and I know I'm throwing a curveball at you, but what do you know, if anything, about the role of even fascia in this process and what the fascia can kind of hold on to because of this bracing?
Well, I can say in terms of, let me go back a little bit in my training, and I'll take myself back 20 years ago in my training. We did not have the information about the body as a whole. We were trained to treat emotions. We were trained to treat relationships, addictions. Those are the things that we were trained to treat. I am now teaching in the same program that I graduated from 20 years ago. We have a absolute focus throughout the curriculum now, a neurobiological focus throughout the curriculum, which light bulbs, as soon as I saw that as a faculty member coming in, just the excitement, the smile from ear to ear, the light bulbs, because we are now seeing, and we look at the vagus nerve and we look at central nervous system as a whole, absolutely our brains are connected to every single part of our body and the way that our body processes any kind of information, any kind of stimuli. So I think my answer is probably more general, that we now, when I say we, the science is now catching up to show documentation that in my field, the brain is not protected from the body at all, because that was part of our curriculum in my field a couple of decades ago, that this was a independent part. And that, when we talked about the physical health and the physical processes, we didn't include the emotion, the limbic system, any part of the limbic system. And we know our stress excess is a part of our limbic system, pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands. So we know that all of these stress hormones originate throughout the body. And the stress hormones in time can lead to panic, imprints of trauma in our body, depression, grief.
Yeah, and I think understanding these signals and these connections, right? Like no one ever put together, or no one puts together in general, like artificial light at the wrong time of the day can spike cortisol, which causes
Right.
weight gain, which causes lack of sleep, which causes cravings for more carbs, and then we're in a vicious cycle, right?
And then you add in those hormones from women and what we go through as women,
Right.
and then post menopause, it changes everything. Yeah.
Do you ever notice, this has come up in other podcasts and worlds I've been circling in, and certainly applies to me, but do you ever notice that when someone hits menopause, suddenly these things start to rear their ugly head more than they did before because of the hormonal changes?
I will say I'm postmenopause. Absolutely. And I have a much better understanding. What's really interesting about your question, Christy, the class that I teach, it's for graduate mental health counselors that are about to start practicing. It's at the end of their program. Our textbook has one little paragraph about menopause, one little tiny paragraph about menopause. And there's this fabulous book. It's called It's All in Her Head. I can't remember who the author was,
Yes.
but the author is a medical doctor. It's an incredible book. When I saw that, though, in my textbook, I really started gathering a lot more information for menopause and understanding the components. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, but including the medical components, the science that shows what it does to our brain. It changes our brain. It's
Absolutely.
documented.
Absolutely. And I've been following Dr. Mindy Pelz for a long time, but she's circulating in this world, and her
Okay.
guests have been fantastic on this subject. So there's a few things that I learned from this that I think you would probably relate to. And it was like, hey, if we could start to do some of these things that we should be doing to maintain our health later, earlier, menopause
Yeah.
might not be so miserable. Right. And I think for me, that's why, like, I never had hot flashes. I didn't have a lot of the classic menopause symptoms. And I'm going to attribute that to having started the health journey quite early in the
Prior.
process. And maybe it wasn't as bad. That doesn't mean I still don't have humps and bumps and contemplating our bioidentical hormones in small clips, good things or bad things. But listening to her talk about the mental changes, and I thought the one thing she said, and I don't know if you've ever spoken to clients like about this, is that if you can approach it as this is a reinvention of yourself and a better version of you,
Mm.
it's got a very different connotation to it than the misery, quote unquote, of menopause.
So we
Does that
call that
resonate?
neuroplasticity. Yes,
Right. So does that resonate with you? Does that sound like something you would say or advise, like talk to someone about
absolutely.
who's going through menopause? Because that's part of it, right? You can't not
Absolutely.
address it. It's like the elephant in the room.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is that I do have clients and even my students when I'm teaching the class that come to me and will say, what's the point? We know what's in our genes. We know what our genetics are. We know what's coming. What's the point? Well, neuroplasticity, first of all, changes the perspective. And epigenetics, I know that's another topic that's just exploding right now in our world. But those two things together give us a sense of agency. We
Mm-hmm.
have control to an extent. To an extent. There are lots of things, of course, when we're looking at genes, we can't change whether or not they're expressed. We don't know. But there's a lot that we do have control over. And that doesn't end when we hit menopause. It doesn't end for men when they hit the age when their hormones start to decline. So we have choices that could really bring more health and wellness to the other part of our life.
I see it with men too. I didn't want to leave the men out because I've seen plenty of middle-aged men who all of a sudden also are all of like traumas that have been buried for years and years, suddenly rearing their ugly head.
It happens in relationships.
Right? Like, so I love Mindy's approach. Like, we can deal with this, process this. And I think, like, I feel like I'm a better person than I was because I have processed this stuff and I have gone through this and I have finally understood where learned behaviors came from. Right?
Yeah,
Because the
tools.
second my brain and the person I want to be isn't being backed up by my actions, I want to look and see why this is, right? Why is this not in alignment? And become the person you want to be, you have to shed that other stuff. And like it is, like you said, it's hard work, but we can do it. And now that we've talked about the menopause and the midlife folks, I want to shift things to the younger generation who I think has it just so tough right now. Way tougher than we had it when we were growing up. It's really hard to be a young adolescent right now growing up.
Sure.
Do you see younger generations approaching mental health differently than when you started?
I will say yes to that. And I also want to qualify that I only work with, in my private practice, I only work with adults 18 and up, but that's also the case with my students too. So I really only work with adults. So I can speak to young adults especially the college age. Prior to private practice, I worked at the university setting. I also had a history of working in secondary education, working with what we call littles as I was starting to get licensed. So I have seen a significant change with social media. Of course, we see that in every aspect of life. But what's really interesting is, and I'll speak a little bit to AI too. What's really interesting though, for example, I have clients often, my young adult clients often, who will come to me and say, after we met last time, I had a little bit of a panic attack and I went on AI or I went on TikTok and I found this information. I think one of the most popular things that I've heard about on TikTok is the sour candies.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about that? The sour
Yep.
candies, that when you're having a panic attack, take the sour candy and that makes the panic attacks go away. There is some science to that, very little, but what's interesting is that we're able to have those conversations. So what they're seeing out in social media, what they're seeing out in their social realm in general, we're able to break down some of the stigmas. We're able to break down the messaging that's not very clear. And I think that has been super helpful. Like anxiety, I have young clients that come to me and say, I have social anxiety and I just want my anxiety to completely go away. And I help them understand why they don't want their anxiety to completely go away.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk through that and why that's important to have anxiety, but to learn to have a little more control over
Yeah.
it. And that's empowering. That brings a lot of empowerment to somebody that has been told through social circles that anxiety, you need to make your anxiety go away. Just
Yeah.
make it go away. Well, we don't want to do that. So I think that's an example of where it's been really helpful. So I am seeing a shift.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too. And the thing that's hard with social media for me is there's so much like this is great, this is not, this is great, this is not, and like in our field, like in what I'm doing in health coaching, like one person's food could be another person's poison.
No.
So,
Yeah.
everybody should fast. Everybody should be carnivore. Everyone should do keto. Like, this is so nuanced for the person. And the most important thing to do is glean the information. And this applies again to what you're saying or what I do. Glean the information because with education and information comes knowledge and that creates empowerment. I mean, at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, it's your body. And I always tell my clients that, like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Your body's going to tell us what to do because
Absolutely.
it's how your body responds to this. Yes, sure, I have a theory of what might help based on your labs and based on, how you're feeling, but what does your body feel like when it does this, right? So
Absolutely.
I just think the dangers of AI and social media is losing that getting in touch with their
That's
self.
individual perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, getting in touch with your own body. And then, this question came to me from a listener. And again, this is I'm shifting gears here, but I'm picking your brain about all kinds of things in this podcast at once. So this question was sent to me by one of my followers who's a caregiver. And I'm seeing this a lot I saw it a lot in patients at our clinic when I was working as a health coach for Dr. Cole, is that we see a lot of them that are caregivers. So I want to talk about people coping with sick parents or a sick spouse. The caregiver is an under talked about segment of the population because that's so trying in itself. It can be draining. What can you offer up as possible healing or coping mechanisms for these people?
That's a really personal question, as well as something that I'm very passionate about that question. So I really appreciate the listener bringing that up. We don't hear a lot about it. I experienced it with my parents. Both of my parents had horrible, debilitating diseases that ultimately they lost their life over. And I was the caregiver through the majority of it, while I was also a counselor. So using my counselor tools, my counselor hat, I still experienced significant health issues during that process because of what my body was going through. So I think what's important to understand is to know, first of all, the message that we don't hear enough as a caregiver. Put it on your window, put it on your mirror so that you see it every day. You're doing a fantastic job. The work that you're doing is a fantastic job. When our bodies are starting to respond to something that didn't go the way that we wanted it to go, or a mistake was made, or something happened, we immediately, as caregivers, start to go to that place of failure, that I should have done a better job. I should be doing a better job. We don't get enough reminders of the job that we are doing is incredible and hard, hard, hard work. One of the things that I walk my clients through, this is something that I work through a lot with what I call the high functioning anxieties, with people that are just at this, and I see this at executive levels too, and careers, but people that are working through life at this go 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 pace, because there's no other pace. That's the only way I'm going to be able to function, especially with caregivers, because another life or other lives are at stake. So we can still be very helpful and very productive and still do the things that we need to do while doing what we call in my field a body scan. Body scan gives you awareness. It takes awareness to do it. It gives you the awareness of going from head to toe internally, thinking through from head to toe internally. Where am I feeling the tension? Are my jaws clenched, tight? Are my shoulders all the way up to my ears? Am I hunched over, walking through? Are my eyes wide open? If you're noticing these signs, deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and you immediately notice a little bit of a shift. It turns the volume down a little bit in your body so that you can still function, you can still do the things that you need to do, but you're paying attention to your heart rate. You're paying attention to the shallow breathing. You're paying attention to the muscle tightness that can eventually lead to TMJ. That's what happened to me unfortunately, after my mom passed away. I had a horrible case of TMJ where my jaw just locked up completely. And
Yeah.
so that's certainly an indicator. That's a message from our body. So I think that's one of the things that I work through with a lot of the caregivers that I work with, is helping them be productive and manage through what they have to manage while they're paying attention to those messages from their body. That's just one of many.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, we're going back to the constant fight or flight. If you're not
Right.
slowing down, right? And I've seen also too the people who literally they can't meditate for 1 minute because they can't
Yeah.
allow themselves that like freedom. And there's been people that I've worked with who, and again, I don't want to step out of my lane in what I do when I might see certain things, but this is not my field to like quote unquote treat or tell people, but I'll see like people who are literally like, there's a fear of the silence, a fear of being still, a fear of, because again, like you said, they're uncomfortable in it because the stillness allows them to think. And I think sometimes it's they don't want to think.
And it's interesting you say that. I have clients that I work with that if they are still, they start to have significant symptoms like dizziness, that vestibular type of migraines. And being still in many types of situations brings them to a place of dizziness. I mean, I have a couple of clients that I'm working with on dizziness, and they can't stand still or sit still. And part of that we know is the central nervous system.
Dr. Perry talks about the vestibular connection all the time to the fight or flight and the stress and the illness. Like he talks about the vestibular system all the time. So that's where we get into, like, we talk about root cause healing. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure that's a good phrase because it's never one thing. It's
Right.
never one thing. It's just that the things are so connected, and that can be really complicated, right? We're trying to help people put the puzzle
Right.
together.
Right.
Because if you start going, oh, well, that could be the vestibular system, and then that's
They
an
check
issue
out.
here, but they're going to check out. They're going to be like,
Yep.
well, you're just giving me a list of things, but what is the real root cause? Well, we don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg sometimes, right?
Right.
So I think, like you said, giving these folks, like, I have a stress and sleep course that I'm creating right now. And part of it is like, we need to learn how to identify stress and understand that stress isn't just getting ticked off in the line at the traffic light. It's there's internal stress going on from
And
these,
right.
right?
Stress is a response to our body. It's a response. It's not a feeling, it's a response. So if we're having high anxiety, we're having stress related to high anxiety.
Right. And that they don't understand sometimes too.
Right.
It's envisioning that things you don't really know about on the conscious level can still be causing stress.
Right. Right. And one of the things that I do when I'm talking to the clients, because I want to get into that biological part of it because that's a big part of my curriculum that I teach, but I know that's not going to be productive and I know that's not going to help. Most of the time when I immediately bring it to, and I work with a lot of clients, most of my clients have severe debilitating panic attacks. So when we talk about panic attacks and I bring it back to the biological aspect, because the first question is, what's wrong with me?
Mhm.
What's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? What's wrong with me? I bring it back to the biology. You're designed that way. There's nothing wrong with you. You're designed that way. When they start to understand our biology and how we're designed, and just use those simple words of biology and that's how you're designed, that gives them empowerment. That gives them a sense of control that they didn't think that they had. And I can immediately start to see their bodies relax
I love
just in that one
I love
discussion.
that. I mean, yeah, I mean, our body is the things our body can overcome. We're wired to survive. We're
Yeah,
right. And
really
that's
are.
like, we should be thankful for some of these. We just don't want them to happen when we're safe, right?
Right,
We want to tell our body that we're safe.
right,
We're
right.
safe. We're not being chased by a tiger right now,
Right. There's
right?
and hearing you say that, there's an incredible woman out there. Her name is Dr. Nadine. Oh, I had it. I use a lot of her studies all the time. She's done some incredible studies on adverse childhood experiences and she has a background in working with children that have gone through adverse experiences. Dr. Nadine Burke. I'm sorry, I knew that name.
It's
Dr.
okay.
Nadine Burke. She's an incredible woman, and you'll see a lot of talks through TED Talk through YouTube. But she talks about that fight or flight and what happens when we have trauma, when we develop as children, or even that trauma that occurs in adulthood, when our central nervous system gets stuck in fight or flight. It's a bear is constantly walking behind you. You're waiting for that bear to pounce. And that's what the body's responding to. And so helping them understand that biological process, again, it's so empowering. I can really go on a tangent on this, but it's so empowering and it's really helped so many of my clients.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I could talk about this for hours because I've dug so deep into this rabbit hole because I wanted to know why are people not getting better when we're doing all these great things? Why are they better for a while, but now the symptoms have come back? And I always think that, again, it's some of these things that are buried in that
Yeah,
subconscious,
right,
right? The
right. That
body's not
limbic
out of fight.
system. Yeah.
Limbic system, I've seen brain retraining. DNRS is something that we've recommended
Okay.
quite a bit to, we'll see clients with what's called mast cell activation or histamine issues. And those people are super sensitive. And why are they like that? Because they
Mhm.
are stuck in fight or flight and the body thinks anything you do from food to supplements, it's a
It's
threat.
danger. Yeah,
Right?
you're
It's
at risk.
danger. So you have to rewire the brain to
Yep.
teach it that you're safe. But I mean, just simple, let's talk like last thing before we get to how
Yeah.
people can contact you. Simple modalities people can use at home. We already talked about yoga, Pilates. Those are
Mhm.
great things to get in touch with your body. Diaphragmatic breathing is so impactful and so simple. Anything
It
else?
really is. Yeah.
And anything else you can think of that is
Well,
helpful?
yeah, and I mentioned the body scan. I do that often with my clients, and it helps to recognize if you're holding your breath. If you're in a high stress situation and you're holding your breath, you're feeling the heartbeat, rapid heartbeat, dizziness. So the body scan, and it's just something quick and simple. And I tell my clients you can do it in 30 to 60 seconds, and it
Yeah.
gives you a whole lot of awareness and information. I'm a huge advocate for yoga for stretching, not yoga for strength training or anything like that, more so for getting in touch with your body. You may be very familiar with this, the heart rate variability.
Yeah. We could do a whole
Teach
podcast on that.
I know. So I teach my clients a little bit about heart rate variability. And if they wear the Apple Watch, it gives them tangible data that they can see changes as they're going through and changing the way that they breathe and stretch and that they have awareness. Can't say enough about walking in nature and doing it consistently. We're just now really starting to see the science that's coming out. What I will say about that is walking versus being overstimulated while you're walking, having the headphones in, looking at your phone, walking while you're doing those things, you're overstimulating your body while you're doing that. in many,
Great
many,
tip.
many cases. So that's another big one that has changed many of my clients' lifestyle.
I did it today, and I usually don't do it. I took the phone with me. I was listening to one of the shows I produced because it was on the air, and I was like, I got to listen to this last segment. And you're right. It's, we have a beautiful place where we live where it's really
Yeah.
easy to just get lost in nature and walk. And I think my tips for people, from what I've seen, get out and do some grounding, get sunlight, because your cells need energy. We are
Yep.
energetic beings. And if
Yep.
our energy is blocked and we're in Wi-Fi all day long and artificial light, that's not what, think of our ancestors, that's not how it was meant to be.
No, we need
You know,
movement. We need
movement.
movement.
Movement and light. We need sunlight, we need movement, grounding and getting the energy from the earth. And we're energetic beings. If we weren't, we wouldn't be
Right.
here. So it's important to get that. So thank you so much for your time. Before we leave, can you give everyone ways to connect with you if they would like to connect with you?
Absolutely. So my email address is pretty long. If you go to Dena Ford, DenaFord, my name, no spaces or anything in between, just denaford.com. All of my information is on there. My email address is on there. My phone number is on there. My phone number is 407-274-8648. That's my private practice number. That's the best way to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you have additional resources that you want to share with me, or just to say hi.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And I want you to come back. We're gonna have to do another episode to talk about vagus nerve and more on HRV.
I'd love to.
I'd love that rabbit hole.
Too.
Like, I can't get enough of that. So let's definitely put that on the books for later. But thank you for coming on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christy. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this edition of Ripple Effect Connection. If you didn't already think it, you do now. Mental health is absolutely physical health, and I'm really glad we are approaching a model that does not treat these two as separate. We will continue this important conversation throughout this podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on social media. I'm at Whole Health Christy on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. And let me know what resonated with you most or what you want to hear in the future. You can always find full show notes and past episodes at christyhugic.com/podcast. Please take a moment to follow, like, review, and share this podcast with anyone who might benefit. A quick review on Apple Podcasts goes a long way in helping me bring more of these amazing guests your way. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Together, let's create waves of change.